How's it going? Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for joining today. Hope you are excited to hear about using Microsoft Edge in the browser. I'm excited to be here. My name is Patrick Kettner. I'm a member of the Microsoft Edge team out at the mothership in Redmond, and I am really excited to be here. On the Edge team, I'm a program manager, and at Microsoft, program manager is a really squishy term, especially on our team. For me, it basically just means I do everything on the browser with the exception of writing C++ code. If I had to write C++ code, I would not have a job at all because I can't do that in any way. I'm a web developer by trade. It's what I kind of cut my teeth on growing up. And I've been doing it for a really long time. I started off in small startups, went up to large Fortune 500 companies where I've helped deploy multi-billion-dollar assets, stuff like that, and internal projects. Before that, I was a sysadmin at one of the larger data centers in Seattle, and because of all that stuff, I've experienced a lot of large company issues when I've been using web browsers, and so it's really cool to be able to be in a position where, I can actually do something about making the experience better. And I'm really excited to be able to be here today and share what my team has been working on with y'all. And even more than how much I want to talk to you guys about what we've been doing, I want to hear you guys. This is my handle on basically every social media network, Patrick Kettner. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Friendster. Anywhere there, I have that handle everywhere. And I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'm really proud of the work that my team's been doing on Edge. I think we're doing a really, really good job, the rate at which we've been adding features and squashing bugs. However, we're far from perfect, as I'm sure you're all aware. Hopefully most of you here have feedback on Edge, and I would love to hear it, good, bad, or otherwise. Feel free to hit me up on the social media, and if your problem is with me, you can also reach out to MS Edge Dev itself. That's an account on Twitter run by a number of my peers. Excuse me. Where you can reach out to more official channels if for some reason you're more comfortable with that. Then there's also this link, the Edge User Voice. Edge User Voice is a really cool website that is a way for you to submit feature requests to the Edge browser. It's completely public. Any user can go on to there and submit a request for a new web API, a missing group policy, anything that you want. If there's a change in the browser that you want to see, you can go there and it can get voted up by the community. And if you look consistently within the last 4 releases, where we've basically been looking to this, almost every single one of the top issues at the time of release was fixed. This is something that's a huge impact on what features we actually ship, because we really care about what you, the users, and the people that control the users at their companies feel like. Not only that, if you're shy, feel free to reach out to me at my email. That's my actual work email. You can email me at any time if you have a problem with Edge or any other browser. We talk to all the browsers all the time. Reach out. I want to help. I want to make your lives easier. Help me. Help me to help you. We'll do good. Cool. So let's actually get to the meat of what we're talking about today. Talking about the browser in the enterprise, I kind of break it down into 4 main sections. Interoperability, or making sure that whatever code you write for Edge works great in Chrome or vice versa. Legacy compat, because not all projects are greenfield. You have a whole bunch of stuff that was written in the IE days, probably up to a decade ago, that you actually still need to have to work, because your job isn't to constantly make websites. Security, of course, we need to make sure that our users' data and your own data is as secure and safe as possible. And finally, productivity, because no matter how secure and compatible you are, if you're not productive in the thing, it's really no point. So, the very first step is going to be interoperability. We measure interoperability on the Edge team in a large number of different ways. Some of them are open, some of them are completely private, and they're all important in their own way. One of my favorites is the rolling 100 test pass. So what this means is we take a sample of the top 100 websites, both worldwide and dependent on individual countries. So it can be major things like Facebook, Google, Netflix, but also things like the government tax submission page in Croatia, something that's legally required for all citizens to use. We absolutely need to make sure that users can use that page there. So we have a large list of pages that we constantly test our browsers in, make sure that they work. Now this line is for Internet Explorer 11. We're passing around 70%, and it was trailing off there as time moves forward. Fortunately, most people aren't really writing websites for Internet Explorer anymore, as you can imagine, and so things are getting worse and worse. It was even compounded by the fact that if you think about what Internet Explorer was, or really the MS-HTML DLL file, it really wasn't one monolithic thing. We didn't add a feature to MS-HTML. We'd have to add a feature to every single compat mode. We had to make sure that it didn't break other versions of compat modes in the past. We emulated all of our different basic, from IE5 until IE11, we emulated every single previous doc mode to make websites work well. So every time we had a bug, a feature, anything like that, it had to make sure that it didn't break any of that. It's painful. Edge, on the other hand, is one thing. It's much more standards-based. As a result, there's only one runtime that we ever have to update, so things can happen much faster. If you look at that same rolling 100 test pass, you'll notice that we are basically at nearly 100%. We average around mid-90s, and it's something that we're constantly trying to trend upwards. Sorry, that's actually Chrome. This is Edge. And you'll notice that we are exactly what I just said because I looked at my slide now. We started off actually worse than Internet Explorer because we removed so many features from Internet Explorer, certain websites got worse. We had to do different things like change our user agent string to say that we were Chrome to trick browsers into actually giving us real content, to adding bug fixes, feature requests, all these different things that I mentioned previously. And we slowly, but over the course of a year, got up to nearly 100% test passes, all while removing more than 30% of our internal code, being faster and more secure. So that's just one way that we measure interoperability, is how much websites actually work. That rolling test pass will actually go in and make sure that logging into Facebook works, or that you can purchase something on Amazon, things that are real-world user scenarios. Another way that we measure it is through a project called the API Catalog. This is something a coworker of mine, Aaron Eccles, works on. And the idea is a little bit kind of propeller heady, but the concept is there is a known quantity of specifications that exist. Generally speaking, the W3C, the standards body that creates standards for the web browsers, has a set number of things that exist inside of them. Inside of each of those specifications, there's a thing called an IDL definition. IDL definition is a really cool idea. It's kind of a pseudo-programming language where you define the interface for a new browser API or an old browser API. Anything that exists has one of these. As a result, this is completely machine readable, and all browsers actually generate the code for their internal APIs from IDLs. So it can automatically get features at a much faster rate, and things are a lot less bug-prone moving forward. Something that existed for about the last 8-9 years, and in case you haven't noticed, browsers have gotten much better in the last 8-9 years, and this is a big part of that. It's also great because it's machine readable. This is a representation of all specifications that exist. We can compare it against our own code to look at how much of our own code covers things that are standards-based and covers things that are not standards-based. The non-standard stuff could be anything from stuff like browser extensions, things that aren't really standardized ever, to features like pointer events or CSS grid that we created before they were standards and we brought over. They're just things that haven't been moved over yet. Perhaps even more interestingly, however, is that you can actually compare it to other browsers. You can see here that not only is Internet Explorer smaller, it's actually less standards-based, which is exactly the type of thing that we were afraid of back when we were developing Internet Explorer. When you compare it against Chrome, you'll notice that Microsoft Edge is closer to Chrome than it was to Internet Explorer at this point, and we're both kind of slowly merging towards more and more standards-based processes. It's a great thing. It's a win for everybody, because one of the main problems that I would imagine most of you have for me is that you have to rewrite your websites that were created for Internet Explorer. It sucks. I know, I've been paid to do it, and I was paid to redo them. And the paycheck's nice, but it's a really big pain in my butt to have to do it. And if you were, and the problem with that was because back in the browser wars, browsers implemented all these proprietary APIs. We were trying to convince users to come to Internet Explorer or to Netscape or whatever browser because we had the coolest APIs to use. But when they're non-standards based, they don't work in other browsers. So when IE was killed eventually by Microsoft, we are now stuck with having to rewrite. If you write to standards, you don't ever really have to worry about that. Websites that work in Chrome work in Edge and vice versa. So another way that we measure interoperability is through certain benchmarks, like the HTML5 test score. This is the HTML5test.com is a website run by a third party. It's no direct browser affiliation, but it's a way to look at a bunch of different features that are coming or have come to browsers and how well the current browser that you're using is implementing them. We're currently at 496 in our latest builds out of a total of 555 points. And you can see this is our trend line over time. When we first started Edge, it was less than 300. It was actually pretty miserable. But compared with Firefox, which is that blue line right there in the middle, we've actually surpassed them in browser features now and stability. And we're slowly encroaching on Chrome, which is kind of plateauing. And that line at the bottom isn't the baseline, that's Internet Explorer. Things are going down and down and down there. Because as websites go on, certain features fall off, and Internet Explorer is not getting any new features ever again. Getting security patches, absolutely, but we're never going to be backporting CSS Grid or service workers or any of the new exciting APIs. IE is basically on ice for now. And in addition to that, there's also the Kengex compatibility tables. Kengex is the handle of a developer at Facebook, and he's a really great JavaScript developer. He made this ugly website where you can keep track of all of the different features that are coming in ECMAScript. If you're unfamiliar, ECMAScript is the official name for JavaScript. It's a whole bunch of boring legal stuff that I'd be happy to explain later, but I don't want to do it here. But effectively, it's all the new features that are coming in JavaScript over time. You'll notice that we shipped and one thing to keep in mind is that all those features were for ECMAScript version in 2016, which means that this graph that starts in 2015, within the year of 2016, we basically got to 100%. And that's really the case of nearly all browsers. For a while, we were leading, but now we're all within 2% of 100%, so it's kind of a zero-sum game for everyone. Point here to keep in mind, though, is that if you're building websites for modern evergreen browsers, you can use the latest JavaScript. These things ship within a matter of months. You no longer have to wait 5 years to actually ship these features. You can have something that was completely, just sparkle in some guy's eye a few months ago, be completely stable and in all production builds within 6 months easily. It's a really different way to build websites today. So those are all the different ways that we measure code compatibility and interoperability. But one of the most valuable and important things for interoperability is how interoperable the browser is with its users. See, as much as we like to be like Chrome or like Firefox and make sure that web developers' lives are as easy as possible, we also want to make sure that web users' lives are as easy as possible. And so we have the HTML5 accessibility benchmark, where we actually come across as the most accessible browser compared with all other major browsers. Now, this is a really cool thing to me. I grew up with a number of deaf people in my family and a number of people with disabilities and other things that are very clearly, if you saw them on the street, they'd be in a wheelchair, they use sign language, they're obviously disabled. And having a browser that can be easier to use, whether it's be additional features that are built into the UI of the browser or additional APIs that allow for developers to create better websites, both of those things are possible. I would urge you, if you make websites, to start. It's really common for a lot of people I talk to think, well, none of my users are really disabled. I would really hope that you could question that assumption. There's this really great graph that came out from the Microsoft design team where they sort of make you think about disability as a spectrum. See, for a great example was for touch. If someone might only be able to use one hand on a computer, it could be because they literally only have one hand. It could be because they're carrying a bag of groceries and they only have one hand at the time. Just start thinking about designing for those edge cases, because when you do, everything else kind of works better. And the more time that you use these new accessible APIs, the more browsers will implement them faster, so the whole world gets better. So, getting off my soapbox, going back into the meat. Next up, we have legacy compat. So, I've been talking about how great it is to be able to write new websites and use the new standards, but realistically, most of my job when I was in an enterprise position was not using the new toys. It was maintaining the thousands and thousands of old web pages that exist. It's a pain, and I know. But we try to make sure that your life is easy as possible with that. Perhaps the simplest way we do that is through user agent strings. I gave a little bit of mention to this earlier. A user agent string, this is edges at the bottom. If you're unfamiliar, it's the unique string that every time any HTTP request gets sent from a browser to a server, it's the way for the server to identify each browser as that specific browser. So Edge sends this string, and then a server knows that, hey, this is Edge. Here are some other examples from other browsers. And each one is theoretically unique, but if you look close, you'll notice a whole lot of a bunch of patterns that pop out. For example, all of them say Mozilla 5 at the beginning. All of them also say Gecko. Some of them some KHTML inside of them. Basically, user agents are a whole bunch of lies. They're pulled from different places because websites will be written in a way where they say we only want to support, say, Internet Explorer. So they code in a whole bunch of different things and make it hard. A really common pattern that I gave mention to earlier was a whole bunch of websites basically say we only want to support WebKit back when the iPhone was launched. And unfortunately, the developers go away or the project gets spun down, but the content still stays online. Our web browser is perfectly capable to run those websites, so unfortunately we have to add a lie saying we're WebKit in our user agent string so that those content just works. This will light up a whole lot more of our website. Remember that huge uptick in our website pass rate? A big chunk of that was simply by adding Google Chrome inside of our user agent string. All the websites just functioned. They just weren't giving us the right data before that. And and this is really, really kind of egregious level of lying a lot of the time. I mean, that Mozilla 5 at the beginning is Netscape Navigator 6. It came out when I was in the 5th grade. And it's really old. No one actually develops a website for this anymore. But every single web browser has to say that they're this web browser because there is literally a non-trivial amount of internet websites that would break if they didn't. Again, to get back on my soapbox for a second, please don't do user agent parsing. It's terrible. If you do, make sure to use a great library because otherwise our user agent strings are going to be longer than Moby Dick in a couple of years from now. So user agent strings are obviously a really simple thing that browsers can do to make web users' lives better. However, if you're in a position where you can't update your content because you're using proprietary old APIs like ActiveX controls or VML or other assets like that, you need to be able to continue to use those old browsers. So for that, we have the enterprise mode site compatibility list. So I'm going to switch over to a demo real quick. Hopefully I don't crap out on it. And boom, 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 boom. Cool. So this is my personal website. Oh, you'll notice that it's responsive and not doing what I want it to do at the moment. And yeah, it's great. It's a SVG icon, a couple little links at the bottom, nothing complex at all. However, it's using an inline SVG in the middle, which doesn't work in old browsers, so it's made for modern technologies. However, if you look at the old version of this website, well, I can promise you it didn't look like that originally. There's a whole bunch of broken code on this page. So I know for a fact that when I originally wrote this, it was meant to be written in the browser that had 96% of the market share, IE. So what I can do is configure through group policy the ability to launch this specific part of our website inside of Internet Explorer and inside of a specific compat mode. So to do that, I just fire up my group policy. I go into, let me get this bigger so I can see it. Excuse me. Dive into administrative templates. Windows components, then Microsoft Edge, which exists somewhere, there you go, and then sort by name so I can find it, and we want to configure enterprise, there we go, configure the enterprise mode site list. Can open that up, I cheated a little bit and have one pre-cooked, so it's just an XML file that we'll go over in just a moment. The idea is that you can configure it to point to an external XML file. Usually this would be on a network share somewhere in your, in your intranet. And then we open up a new session to clear it out. Now, if we open up that same website, when we navigate to it, you can configure it to have this warning or go automatically. But what we'll do is just open up an Internet Explorer, and nothing works, of course. Sorry, 1 second. Live demos are never useful. Yep. Cool. Great. So now we've hit that up and we've launched in Internet Explorer 5, and you see the mini version of me without a beard. And so this is actually running, if you open up DevTools, open up the F12 tools inside of it, you'll notice, if you look closely, that we're actually running in the IE5 compat mode. In addition to that, we are running in the enterprise mode, which is the enterprise emulation mode is just a more fine-grained version of compatibility that exists. So the way that this is actually configured, the easiest way, is through the enterprise mode site manager list. I'll give you a link to download this at in a second. But what it ends up looking like is as simple as this. So we just have our two URLs here. I'll just go ahead and delete and add this. I'll do it again. So the idea is you put in a domain that you know you want to render in a certain browser. So we'll do patrickkettner.com/old site. And then you have all the different doc modes that are available in IE11. This was a feature that was originally, the Windows site compatibility list was implemented in IE11. So it exists in Windows 8 and Windows 10. It's especially useful in Windows 10 where you have Edge, which is a more advanced and standards-based browser, where you can fall back to IE11 when you need. So you can download this, and you can pick the doc mode. I know for a fact that that little icon's using VML because it's a super old website. And so I know that I'm going to need IE5 doc mode. And I can open it. You can configure it to open in IE11 or Edge. By default, obviously, I want IE11 since Edge does not have any form of doc mode. And so not only that, but you can do a really cool trick. where I know that the rest of the website, just that one page, is actually completely great and standards-based and everything else. And so I can configure the website to actually open always in the default mode of MS Edge. So if you go back to the root of the page, it will actually kick you out of Internet Explorer and back into Microsoft Edge. I can show you like this. So I click this link, the DHTML rocks link, and it'll actually open us back up in Edge. So it opened a new tab, and normally it'll do some window switching. I apologize, I was on a insider build, so that things are a little bit flaky. But that way your user doesn't get stuck in the version of Internet Explorer. Basically, you can ensure that they're maintaining the latest and safest browser in Microsoft Edge, but occasionally when we're not capable of running your old content, you can kick back to Internet Explorer. You get the best of both worlds while you migrate over to the off of Internet Explorer and onto Microsoft Edge. Sorry, yeah. Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, yeah, by default, if your browser should be Edge by default, depending on your market, there's a small amount of countries that don't have Edge as a default browser. So all content would be loaded in Edge by default already. You have the ability to force it to load in Edge. So like that's what the second rule that I added was. I apologize, just to repeat the question, it was that can the old content be shown in Edge? And that is the default behavior. You can also configure it through your group policy, which is what I did here. You can add a URL that's specific to your own enterprise or your own intranet and have the browser open it inside of MS Edge by default. So if your user browses to it in IE11, it will actually open in Edge. Yes, go ahead.
Well, if we have an old site that requires IE7 and it uses plugins like old SMX,
sure.
It can run in a window in Edge browser?
No, none of this will run in Edge because all that code was deleted gleefully by the team. And so what this actually does is open up IE11. If it runs in IE11 with the IE7 document mode, the content would work there. So basically, if it works in IE11, it's a way to do that. All this is really doing is enforcing a way for you to load a specific browser based off of a domain or a specific URL even. So jumping back into the presentation. Yeah.
So if we have an enterprise mode site list now that we're using for Windows 7, 11, do we have to have a second enterprise?
You don't have to, no. You can reuse the same. It's, there's a registry key as well as a group policy for a specific, I apologize, the question was if you're already using a enterprise site compatibility mode list for Windows 7, do you have to use the same one or can you have a unique one? Each of these are individual strings that are kept URL to your XML file inside of your group policy or your registry key. You can totally reuse it if you want to. You can have separate ones. It's up to you. It's the exact same schema format, though. There is a version 2 of the schema that I'm going to show you in just a moment where it's much less verbose, but the files would work the same. Both tools will accept version 1 and version 2 of that schema. Cool. And we can go from the current slide. And cool. So if you want to, so this is the tool, the link to go ahead and download that enterprise site list tool. And all this really is a glorified XML editor. The file is just an XML file. This is just a slightly less ugly way to edit an XML file. This is that schema difference that I mentioned before. This side closest to me over here on the left is the version 2, and the other side that's beyond the entirety of the page is version 1. You can tell it's a lot less verbose. They have the same capabilities, it's just a more concise syntax. And I am really serious that it is just an XML file. You can open it up in Notepad or Vim or whatever. If you want to edit it that way, it's totally possible. You have to validate your own XML. But all it is a list of URLs, and then you'll see, you know, compat mode default, open in MS Edge, etc. And it's useful if you're editing your own local sites or if you're the only person editing. But it's kind of painful if you actually have to do this in a large deploy. So my team built a tool that we call the Enterprise Mode Site Compatibility List Manager. This is a web-based tool that you can download off of GitHub. Here's a short URL to grab it from. And it not only allows you to edit the same XML file, but it actually introduced the concept of content flow. So a person can submit a request for a feature or a URL to be supported in a certain browser in a certain way. You can have actual control over who can approve those things, when they get merged, a subset of your users, all the different options. It's a really powerful tool. I highly suggest that you check it out. And yeah, here's a view of when a user can create a new request, and there's all the different steps up there. It shows you all the different options that are available. Again, you can download it at this URL, and if you have questions as far as how you can control that data, you can go over to this domain. This is the AKMS EMSLP setup. It gives you about a 10-minute walkthrough on how to install this locally. It can run as its own standalone web application. It's optimized for IIS, as you can imagine, but it allows you to run it in any kind of web experience. It's completely open on GitHub, and I highly suggest that you go ahead and check it out. If you have any problems with it, submit issues, either to me personally or on the GitHub, and we can work together to make it exactly what you need. Sir, you had a question?
Yeah, I noticed on I-11 to trigger it to download a fresh copy of the XML file, you have to close and reopen the browser. I didn't see you do that on Edge. Does Edge constantly look for an updated copy?
No. So when you publish a new version of your XML file, there's a field on it that's something like the version field. Here, let me jump back. Yeah, right here at the top, you can see where it says version equals 1. That's stored inside of the registry key. Whenever a URL that's on that list is hit, it will request it within 65 seconds. It'll check to see if that version is the same or newer, or if it's higher than that, it will replace it on that same session.
So Edge looks every 65 seconds?
No, within 65 seconds of requesting a page. It's not a polling situation or anything like that. But yeah, it's much more frequent. That being said, it's always faster just to close it and not. I've just set up that environment to be faster for me. It's one of the benefits of knowing the code of Microsoft. Yeah, so again, that's the, here is the domain for that tool. It's extremely valuable. It saved me a whole bunch of time. I really suggest that you guys check it out if you have anything to do with the enterprise mode site list portal. Not only that, but that same technology is actually built into Edge for all default users. Sir, yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, can you do something like command line options in there? So like if you want to do no frame merging or something like that?
I'm not aware of that being a possibility. That being said, we're always open to feature requests, so feel free to submit that on the user voice, and we can look into it. Go ahead, sir.
We use the enterprise mode site list quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the struggles we constantly have is we'll have a group ask us to change the entry for their site.
Sure.
We'll make that change, and for the next 2 weeks, we're getting bombarded from them saying, it's not working on all our machines, it's not working
Sure.
on all our machines.
So basically, how can you speed up the updates of that? So are you the question was basically, when you submit a change on group policy, it can sometimes take weeks before it's updated. I assume you're using group policy to push this up?
Policy stays the same, it's all pointing to the same.
Correct, yes.
We update the XML.
Gotcha, okay.
Restart the IIS site, but then the users, when they go to it, they're
Right.
not getting the updated content very effectively.
Gotcha. Is this an Internet Explorer most of the time, or is this for Edge? Like, is it's for both? Okay.
Our environment's about 0.5.10, 0.7, so.
Gotcha, okay. So Edge should be able to pick stuff up faster than IE did previously. That being said, the simplest answer is a lot of times users aren't actually closing the browser, as silly as it sounds. They'll leave it open for literally weeks at a time because it takes an extra minute to boot up in the morning. And so that would be the first debug step, is literally just close out that session. It sounds like turn it off and turn it back on again, but that honestly is kind of what the step is. Outside of that, if you do push a group if you force push a group policy submission out, it should re-trigger the XML update. So it's something to look into. And if feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I can give you my contact info.
Policy doesn't change.
Totally, but just the act of actually forcing it might refresh the internal cache for that. But yeah, I'd be happy to follow up with you outside of it.
I resort to it, all else fails is I go into the cached files on IE and I delete the cached copy.
Yeah,
of the XML.
that would take care of it too. But yeah, I'm happy to chat about it more afterwards. I'm sorry, did I see another hand somewhere?
No, I was raising my hand. We're experiencing the same thing.
Oh, okay.
In my company, and usually it's because some files were cached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always a level of caching at some layer of the stack. It's just a matter of figuring out the most correct way of clearing that cache. Yeah, do we have any? So on this feature, the site compatibility list is actually something built into Edge itself for the entirety of the Edge user base. Every user that exists in Edge, we have a list of domains that just simply we haven't been able to work with to update. These are major websites in various countries around the world where they just either are completely dead as far as updates go, or they're simply not interested in Edge compatibility. We can force them to go into Internet Explorer mode. This screenshot's from a few months ago. It's at about just under 3,000 unique domains that are in there by default. We're already down to less than 1,000 in the latest versions of builds. We're really, really actively pushing to kill this list as soon as possible. It's a stopgap measure. However, it is something you can check out yourself. If you go to About Compat in the URL bar of Microsoft Edge, you can see all the domains that are there, and you can manually edit any of them that you happen to be interested in. You'll also see the enterprise mode site list on there as well if you ever want to dig into that. Is there any other questions about site compatibility before we move on? Awesome. So next object is going to be security. You know, as much as compat and interoperability is great, if you're incredibly insecure, it's a really, really bad day. And at Microsoft, we try to make hackers' lives as miserable as possible. We do this a lot of different ways. One of the coolest ones, in my opinion, is our site scan technology. So this is a survey or a research paper that was done by NSS Labs, a security research center. And they found that given a number of known phishing URLs, basically ones that have been caught through honeypots, and they open them in every major browser, you'll see that Microsoft Edge blocked by far the most. So, you know, the biggest security issue is usually between the keyboard and the chair. And you can tell that Microsoft goes an extra mile and literally almost more than more than Chrome and Firefox combined. In the case of block sites for malware attacks, we actually block more content and make your users safer. We're generally speaking going to block the most content, at least given today's metrics. However, you know, this is the best because the code never actually even runs on the user's computer. We're blocked at like the URL level effectively. However, you know, you can't catch everything that way. There's tons of things that can get hacked. Ad networks can have malicious content. And so we have a number of different steps that we do inside of the process itself to try and reduce the content as much as possible. The first one is what we call mitigations. Mitigations are steps that we take internally at multiple levels of the operating system in order to support as much content as possible and keep our users as safe as possible. And so there's a whole bunch of different things that we do inside of our mitigations. I'm going to go over a couple of little ones. One of them is the Code Integrity Guard. What Code Integrity Guard is, you can imagine a simple setup like this. This is the inside of the browser process itself. We have an individual thread for each tab. So every tab that you open spins up a new isolated thing. And then it has to communicate with the kernel in order to actually do anything. And so what happens is if a user ends up loading a malicious content, we have a little bit of a poison pill on the side inside of our tab process. It can do something. A really common hack attempt is to inject your own C++ code using JavaScript, HTML, or something like that. Find some kind of flaw in the browser, and then try to inject native code. If they can do that, it could be executed at the exact same privilege as Microsoft Edge itself, which would be really dangerous. You could read anything that Edge could do as a process, the malicious user could do, and Edge can do a lot. We're a part of the operating system. So what Code Integrity Guard does is at the inside of the kernel, when a submission to the memory manager is submitted, we actually check whether or not every single piece of code that's being run has been signed. Because Microsoft makes their own browser, we have our own certificate, just like you as a developer should have your own certificate if you publish apps. And we sign every single binary that we release. So no code that gets injected in here would ever actually run. If it is officially signed by our own certificate that hackers don't have access to, then the request goes back in and everything works. However, in the case of an actual attacker, it won't be signed, so the code will just be denied. Code will never run, even if it was completely valid. We can stop a huge portion of attacks in the wild with this exact technique. And so the actual poison process is completely killed. It does nothing. Another mitigation that we work on is the arbitrary code guard. Now, the arbitrary code guard enforces three main things inside of the code that's run. First of which, code is immutable. Now, in this context, code references the C++ code that our engineers write. Now, what that means is that the code that runs the Edge process can't change. We can change in the update process when Edge is stopped, but during the running of Edge, it won't actually be able to have new C++ code injected. This means that drive-by attacks that can be loaded through malicious JavaScript or anything like that can't happen. That's because data cannot become code. Data in this case is your code. It's JavaScript, HTML, etc. Inside of our code that powers Edge, we have a complete separation between any content that comes from outside of our own Microsoft signed binaries and stuff that's actually submitted by a user, in this case websites or anything like that, extensions, etc. And then finally, it has a prevention of write and executable code. This W:(X) is a data science term. It basically means you cannot write You cannot request a memory access that allows you to both write to a memory space and execute in a memory space. Any individual piece of memory can only write or execute. It can't do both. The issue on why that's important is because, again, back in our former model, previously, without this kind of a mitigation in place, an attacker could request a memory access space, and if there was some kind of unclean code, like say Edge was storing some private personal data in a memory space, and then the attacker was able to request that exact same memory space later on, it could inject something that later gets executed again by the Edge process. Because it was requesting to be able to write to a code space that would later be executed by the Edge process. This is dangerous. This is something that's really bad, and it's how a lot of 0 days happen. It's how a lot of leaks and that sort of a thing occur. Now, with arbitrary code guard in place, what happens is that the exact same submission goes through to the memory manager, and if it is at all dynamic, in which all content that's coming from the tab process would be considered dynamic, it's blocked. If it's not coming from our own Microsoft-signed binaries, they will not be able to execute. So it keeps your users safe, even if they're going to malicious websites. Now, we have a whole bunch of mitigations in place. That's just 2 of the simpler ones, because I'm not smart enough to really understand a lot of them. We have some really, really, really smart security people constantly battling that battle. And there's a whole lot more to it. But outside of mitigations, we also have the sandbox. So if you're unfamiliar, about a year ago, we started a new project called Barcelona. It was released publicly about a year ago, rather. And the idea is publicly known as Application Guard. You can enable it by going into Windows features and turning it on or off. It is on by default in the Fall Creators update in October 17, with a couple of caveats that I'll get into in a moment. But the idea of Application Guard is something that was a really, really cool feature. We inherited it from the cloud team, and the idea is incredibly thin virtual machines. So basically, once you enable this feature, you have to reboot because you're enabling a new Microsoft feature, and then it can read from that exact same site mode that you generated before, or a unique site mode if you wanted for that. And what happens is that whenever a user will go into their browser, or any other content, if they ever launch the browser in any way, it'll actually launch in a new virtualized container. This might look nearly identical to Edge, but it is a complete virtual machine. There is no content that escapes these boundaries, and it's really, really lightweight. There's almost no more resources that are used compared to a normal version of Edge. It's something that our cloud team had worked on that makes it really, really efficient, and it's really cool. There is a very slight visual difference. You'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, you have that kind of red guard symbol. Basically tells the user that, hey, this is a secure virtual machine environment. Now, it means that there's a lot more security involved in that. You can directly go to malicious websites without really concern about compromise. The people that built this tool actually demonstrated to my team by going directly to a WannaCry, the ransomware that was released and took over a whole bunch of websites, or sorry, took over a whole bunch of computers last year through malicious websites directly in an app container. The app container got compromised because they removed the mitigations that would prevent WannaCry for public release. And they just closed the process, didn't hit the operating system. It compromised the virtual machine, not the entire machine. So this is something that you can enable by default using those Windows settings. And every time your users go to any website, it will launch inside of a virtual container. And then if you ever want to have exceptions to that, say you want to have websites that maintain their state longer, or if you want something that, because whenever you close the virtual machine, you will lose your state. It's kind of like an in-private window in that way. You can have on your enterprise site compatibility mode list a list of domains that are safe that can load in normal versions of Edge, which are safe, but a virtual machine will just kind of make it that much safer. So yeah, like I said, it's just you have that whole list of domains. By default, you can have them either blocked or not blocked on your enterprise list, and then you just are able to individually approve domains if that is something you're interested in. And then ultimately, it's inevitable that between now and the heat death of the universe, there will be a bug in Edge. There will be a security bug. It's something that we work day and night to never have happen, but we're human. It will happen eventually. And so the most important thing, I think, for our security team is our rapid response. You'll know that since Edge was initially released, nearly every single fix that's come out as a result of a malicious code injection or some kind of a vulnerability in Edge has been within 24 hours, full public release. Very rare circumstances, and even then it's 36 hours most of the time beyond that. And now, if you follow along to nerdy stuff, you might have seen that in the last 10 years or so, the far left of this chart is going to be in 2016, far right at the end of 2016, 2006 to 2016, you'll notice that the number of CVEs, or critical vulnerabilities, that Edge has patched is generally trending upwards. You know, our all-time high was actually in 2015 with over 300. It's nearly one a day of some kind of critical vulnerability. Interesting side note to this, though, isn't really that there's been problems with Microsoft Edge. It's really just a change in landscape. With the oncoming of mobile phones and, you know, more and more people moving to the web, there's just simply more and more people trying to attack people constantly. So this is a chart of all of the CVEs that have been announced within Edge, Chrome, and Firefox from the time that Edge was released. So this is not all Chrome of all time. These are simply from every Chrome release since the day Edge was released. And you'll notice that Edge is basically half of the CVEs of Chrome and Firefox. Chrome and Firefox have to patch more security issues than Edge does, given the same amount of time. And not only that, but the actual number of CVEs that are known to be exploited, meaning the 0 days, something that a user actually gets hit by, is completely trending downwards. Last year we had 6 by the end of the year, and one of them just snuck in under the wire in total. In the entire world, we found 6 actual 0 days, and we were able to stop them within 24 hours. You know, make sure that your security updates are on by default and hopefully approved quickly, because this can prevent that sort of thing, and hopefully we can get that number to 0 as soon as possible. But in general, browsers as a whole, and Edge specifically, are getting much, much more secure as time goes on. Not only that, but just in general, our release cycle is much faster. So I grew up as a web developer nerd, and so I always hated how Internet Explorer never updated, and those days are long gone. We have a number of different release channels, if you're unfamiliar. Edge is still tied to the operating system. We update through Windows updates in general, but Windows updates have a number of different possibilities for how you can update. There is the main branch, the stable. That's something that I would recommend any of your users be on if they don't need the latest features. They can just get updates every semi-annually, basically. Every 6 months or so, we get major stable updates. And then obviously security updates on Patch Tuesdays, et cetera. Something I'd recommend for developers or enterprise IT pros, stuff like that, would be on one of our fast rings. We offer those 3 in the middle. There are various speeds at which we update releases. I personally am on a nightly build because I work for the company, but if I wasn't, I'd be on fast ring. That's something where effectively the first public builds that come out, you have the ability to download and run locally, so you can make sure that your websites are compatible. If there's any major bugs, we have the ability to, you know, stop our ship and fix it before we actually ship out to public. Because if you miss that, it might be 6 months before we can ship a bug fix for whatever thing we broke. You catch it in pre-releases, we actually fix a huge amount of them. This last release, we had over 1,000 publicly reported bug fixes that we were able to fix before we shipped. It's great. You know, so be on that fast ring and you can actually impact what ships. Yeah. And finally, there's the productivity branch. So, you know, productivity is probably, after security, the most important thing, because if you can't be productive, or if it's too distracting, or if it's hard to use, you know, I've seen my parents' Internet Explorer that has like 15 toolbars on top of it. It becomes really, really difficult to actually get anything done. We do a bunch of different things for that. This one's really cool. Previously, this is Edge 14 on the left, we would block on the UI thread if there was ever any kind of navigation. What that means is that users you're going to see is trying to click that domain where it says Congress Outlaws Bubblegum, and nothing's happening. That's because an ad was loading in the background. JavaScript was blocking, and we weren't able to navigate to it. As of Edge 15, which is the current public release, you'll notice that I started it nearly 10 seconds later, and it still finished before the first. It's because we no longer block on that. So we have a number of different small changes that, to our own performance to make the browser just kind of get out of your way. We want Edge to be as kind of seamless and window-like as possible. We don't want you to realize that you're even using a browser. We just want you to experience the web. So we add features like this. And again, if there's any bugs or any problems that you have that make you realize that you're using a browser, something's kind of gross or clunky, feel free to reach out. We want to make the world a better place through the browser. Not only that, another thing we're really proud of is our energy efficiency. See, the Microsoft Edge is in a unique position on Windows because we only ship on Windows. Not only that, we own the company that makes the operating system. And so we have best-in-class engineers, and we have the ability to call much lower metal APIs than, say, Chrome or Firefox. When they implement a new feature, they don't want to have to implement it uniquely on every single platform they ship a browser to. They create some kind of abstraction layer, and every time they do that, they kind of add up, and it results in poor battery life. Now, as a result, because we were able to really care about the performance specifically of Windows 10, we're able to use a substantially smaller amount of power on almost all levels of the operating system. That big blue bar at the bottom is CPU power. It's less than 2/3 of what's used in Chrome, and Firefox, and about 2/3 of what's used in Chrome 57. The GPU power is, again, smaller, and Wi-Fi power is smaller still. Not only that, we set up a bench where we just basically were loading web pages in the background and default builds of identical machines. And the default install of Edge on a Surface Book lasted over 12 hours. Compare that with 7 hours in Firefox or 9 hours in Chrome. Now, obviously, I know a lot of people at Firefox and Chrome. They're really good people. They're constantly trying to get the battery better. But it's just really not possible to compete when you have such low-level APIs. We only have to care about the performance of Windows 10. And so naturally, you're going to have the best performance in Edge on Windows 10. The less code that has to be executed, the less abstractions they have to go through, it means for a faster and better experience for your users. Yeah, another thing that I was really excited to see come out in RS2, or the Edge 15 release about 5 months ago, was the favorite syncing. So now, I know this was a big pain previously, you can actually have automatic syncing between Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer. You can control this through a group policy setting, but what this means is that as you edit a favorite inside of Edge, it gets synced automatically over to Internet Explorer, and vice versa. This isn't an import-export process. This is a literal live two-way sync. So you can live in both browsers. You can have half your content still be in IE, and all your users' favorites continue to get updated there. Not only that, but say you're working on a website to migrate it from Internet Explorer to an Edge new standards-based browser, your user can still click on that same favorite in IE using the enterprise site mode compatibility list. It'll automatically open in Edge once you decide it's ready to be lit up. They won't have to change their workflow at all. It'll just work. It's a really cool example of what can be possible, what can be done. Another great thing that was a lot of kind of fun, I don't know about you, but when I deep dive on stuff on the internet, I open up like a million tabs. And so, let me see if I can get this going. Yeah. And so we have this feature called Tab Set Aside. So what that looks like is that up here in the upper left-hand corner, you have this kind of double tab looking thing. And you'll see earlier, I have an Australian cattle dog, and I was researching stuff about them earlier. And so you can set aside a whole bunch of tabs. So this is a previous browsing experience that I had. Go ahead and hit Restore All Tabs, and it'll reopen the entirety of all the domains that I was looking at before. So if your boss ever comes up to you and says, hey, I need you to look at something immediately, you don't have to worry about the 100 tabs you have open. You can just set them aside, start to work on your new process, and then come back to it at a later time. So again, it's just as easy as hitting that button to set aside, and now I can go to Wikipedia or whatever I need to do, Stack Overflow or Google, and find out how to fix whatever coding problem I'm working on. It does, yes. It persists through a reboot. You can shut down the system. It can come back. Yeah, it works really well. It's a really, really helpful feature because I no longer have to have like 200 tabs open where I can't even see the domain name. Yeah, and then another cool thing for productivity is our extensions. And it was obviously really painful to launch Microsoft Edge without full extension support back when we first started about 2 years ago. But we now have over 70 extensions, which are actually almost all of the feature requests. You know, there are thousands of extensions that exist on Chrome and Firefox, but nobody wants almost any of them. When we deal with actual user requests, we've prioritized the ones that actually come in, and we basically have the list here. Stuff like uBlock or Ebates or Ghostery. Major websites that completely change the way you browse the web, make our users much happier, are now available. We're actively taking in new suggestions for extensions to work with. We work directly with the creators of these extensions to make sure the performance and security are as up to par. If you talk to any Chrome engineer, they'll tell you how much they regret the extension model right now, because a lot of the reasons why their battery is so bad is because people load up 30 extensions and they just constantly do, you know, random code that some 15-year-old wrote in the background constantly, you know, mining Bitcoin or something. It's, so we are much more strict. However, you can actually create and sideload your own extension even through a group policy. You can also turn off the ability to install the extensions from a group policy if you don't trust your users to use any of these. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can sideload the extensions. Sideloading is just a process where basically you have, within the menu process of Edge, you can go in and you hit a button that says like load extension. And what these files are really just kind of like glorified zip files. And so you can download that file. Most of these are public on GitHub. And then you basically just go that. I don't know if we can manually install them. Sorry, I don't know if you'd be able to automatically install them through group policy. I can look into that for you. But yeah, by default, that's how generally you would suggest people to develop them locally. That process would work for users if they wanted to. Yes, sir.
How secure are how safe are these extensions from the, like,
Sir.
recently had the phishing attacks?
Absolutely, yes. So all of these extensions are things that we personally hand vet. We work with the developers directly. If there is ever, we haven't had any security issues. If there ever was, I guarantee you they'd be removed from the store as soon as possible and probably not brought back, with the exception of potential hacking, that sort of a thing. Yeah, exactly. The extension process is its own tab process. That being said, extensions by their nature have access to their current tab. And so like if you have a tab that updates your Facebook photo by doing something kooky to it, you'll have leaked all the access stuff inside of Facebook. However, they don't have privilege. They can't like run arbitrary binaries on the system, things like that, whereas Chrome they could. So you have a larger attack surface there. We have a smaller API surface intentionally. We are very, very careful on the things that we add specifically for security and battery life. Any other questions?
What about extension updates?
What about extension updates?
Are they rechecked as they're
Yeah, absolutely.
in the code library
Yep.
or into the store?
Yep. Yep. That's one of the benefits of having 70 extensions is you can actually check them. When you have 10,000 extensions, there's just not
An automated process that goes through and vets.
automated and manual. We have automated code scanning within Windows Store itself. We have a team of the team that works with the extension developers that actually update these things, go through and help make sure that whatever updates happen are secure and valid and signed. It's another thing, all these updates are Windows Store apps, so they have full certificate signing. Yeah. Any other questions? Beautiful. Well, that's basically getting into the wrap-up phase. So when we're thinking of the enterprise and how we can use Edge in the enterprise, there was the 4 major sections. We want to make sure that we're interoperable. The big pain in the ass, with using Edge or with having to change from Internet Explorer to Edge is because so many websites were written to only work in Internet Explorer. And that sucks. It was a side effect of the browser war, like I said before. I'm really sorry. I wasn't able to be paid to work at Microsoft at the time. I would have tried to prevent it. But hopefully, if you write websites that are interoperable, you avoid that. If you have a website that works in multiple browsers, you don't have to worry about the only one it works in shutting down. And therefore, write to standards and be interoperable. Not only that, we try to make your existing applications, while we obviously believe Edge is the future, there is no Internet Explorer team whatsoever. 0 people are working on it. We backport security fixes when they come in, but that is it. No features are coming. We do want to make sure that your life is as easy as possible because you have to deal with Internet Explorer. We build tools and we are absolutely open to suggestions on things that could possibly make the experience better. However, we definitely want to see everybody migrate over to Edge over time. Security, of course, is something we take with the highest of care at Microsoft. We want to make sure that everything is as secure as all times, and things are generally trending towards having almost no security incidents. And ultimately, productivity. We want to make sure that our browser is as useful and as fast as possible for all of our users. If you have suggestions or things that are making you feel less productive, please reach out to either myself, MS Edge, or the user voice and let us know. And yeah, again, that's my contact information. Please reach out to me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take Q&A answers right now. And then otherwise, thanks for coming. He had his hand up. I'll get over to you. Yes, sir. Yes. Uh-huh. Sure. Yeah, no, it's, it changes from release to release, but unless something happened in Firefox 57, sorry, the question was, is our memory and CPU usage is smaller than Firefox and Chrome? Generally speaking, yes. There are occasions where under certain circumstances and certain hardware configurations it'd be close, or they might be slightly better, but it's a really rare thing. Because they have to have all those abstractions in order to work, they don't want to write a specific network stack for Windows and OS X and Android and everything else. We're generally just going to use less code, which means we run faster. If you ever see that we're using substantially more process power or CPU, memory, et cetera, please let us know, because that shouldn't be happening. But we have to support billions of hardware matrices effectively. Did you still have a question, sir?
At a pre-conference yesterday,
Uh-huh.
the guy said soon IE wouldn't be supported on many external websites, such as YouTube was one he mentioned.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you comment on what that means and when, and is there
Sure.
an end of life for IE?
Sure. So, so the question was effectively, what's the future for IE? Is that a fair enough summation? And that somebody had said that a number of websites were going to stop supporting Internet Explorer in general. Generally speaking, I'll get to you in a second. Sir. Your top supported websites are going to be supporting the versions of Internet Explorer that Microsoft supports. Right now, we support the latest version of Internet Explorer on any version of our operating system that gets security updates. That is basically a very specific version of Vista Server, and which supports IE9 and then IE11. We actually don't support IE10 at all anymore because there's no operating system that gets security updates that is stuck on IE10. They can all update to IE11. As far as the long-term viability of Internet Explorer, it's not going away anytime soon. There's a whole lot of legal reasons in various countries around the world. Places like South Korea, they actually mandate specific encryption standards higher than the DoD, and they are only currently supported inside of an ActiveX controller. Places like that, we actually still ship IE11 as a default browser. It's simply not possible to end-of-life IE in that country right now. Our goal is certainly to end IE as soon as possible. It's not going to be soon. We're not going to abandon our users. If people need to use Internet Explorer, we're going to continue to support it for security, and it will continue to be updated until security releases for Windows 8 no longer get security releases. If you have a enterprise server level, that honestly could be up to like 20 years, but realistically, probably within the next 5-10 years, you shouldn't be on Internet Explorer at all anymore. And then major websites like Facebook and YouTube, they'll be supporting IE for a very long time. They don't want to lose users. Thomas, you were next.
As a follow-up to his question, when I'm using Azure admin consoles a lot, I find Edge has memory.
As a memory leak, is that what you said?
Yeah, if you just leave it on for a few hours.
Gotcha. It's absolutely a possibility. It's something that we chase down in websites all the time. The best thing step forward would be to reach out to myself or the MS Edge and just say, hey, this is happening, and then we can work. Really cool thing, depending on the size of your company, one thing that we offer on the Edge team is actually these things called performance clubs. Myself or some of my peers actually got to go on site to large corporations or have Skype calls with some of the smaller teams that can't make sense for us to fly to. And we'll actually go through for hours and go over performance optimizations. Things that we actually look and say, hey, there's a memory leak. And so we do that sort of thing with our own companies like Azure regularly. We also go out on site and work with companies all over the country and do Skype calls all around the world to look for things where if your site is performing substantially slower in Edge or IE11, we try and help you to make sure that there's not something we can do at a browser level to make it faster. Basically, if it's ever worse than Chrome, let us know, because that shouldn't happen. I believe you were next, sir.
Is there no longer the concept of trusted sites? You don't need them anymore?
Well, I mean, trusted sites, I guess what part of trusted sites are you referring to?
So like we have sites that call plugins, or they call applets, or they call
Sure.
whatever.
Well, we don't have applets or plugins anymore, and so that concept in that sense doesn't exist. It still exists in IE, so if you have the enterprise list, it's not being removed from IE. But Edge is trying to remove a lot of those plugins because so many of our security attacks that came in Internet Explorer came from Java, Flash, Silverlight plugins. So in that sense, the trusted sites doesn't really exist. The closest thing would be enterprise site mode. Theoretically, can be paired with trusted sites to launch those in IE in the same way. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Yes, sir.
When you launch a link from Outlook,
Mm-hmm.
the
Application card?
application card
Yes, sir.
enabled, if Edge is already running,
Mm-hmm.
will the link open an entirely new window, or will it open up as an extra tab in the already existing browser?
Is the existing browser already running an application card?
No, it was launched separately.
So, well, you can launch Edge in an application card by default, to be clear. So like you can click the link and it would open it. If it's not running an application card, it will not open a new tab in a non-application card version. It would open, if your group policy mandates that domain, open it. I believe separate domains will open in the same group, like they're isolated at the tab level, and so they shouldn't have any they're not. It won't be like 50 application card processes for 50 unique URLs, but it definitely wouldn't open in a non-app guard if you've configured it to open an app guard. I felt like I saw a hand over here. Was there one? Cool. Yeah, what's up?
I have a Windows 10 machine here, for example, and I have Edge set as the cursor format.
Mhm.
And then when I open a link from Outlook, it still asks me which browser would like to choose.
Sure.
Is there a way to disable this?
This is like the Windows 10 pick an application to launch it in. By default, under the more settings, there should be a thing to like accept as default. Effectively, what that is a protocol handler. So it's true for any file you upload, or if you tried to click on an FTP link, it basically says if it doesn't have a default set inside of your registry, it goes through and requests all applications that are associated with that protocol.
Can I deploy a XML file to
Yeah. Setting it as the default browser, Edge as the default browser through your group policy, your GPO, will prevent that from popping up. And if it doesn't, reach out because that shouldn't happen. Yeah.
So my company is currently deploying Windows 10.
Oh, great.
And we actually turn Edge off. We
Okay.
switch back to Internet Explorer
Oh,
as our default browser.
Sorry to hear that.
The reason we're actually doing that is because if we set up Edge as our default browser, and we want all our intranet websites to run in Internet Explorer, unfortunately, there were a lot of legacy
Sure.
applications.
So there's actually a group policy specifically for that scenario. You can set intranet to open an Internet Explorer specifically.
So that's what we had set up
Okay.
initially. But the problem is when you actually in Outlook, when you try to open a link, it will launch Edge first.
Yes.
And then it gets redirected to
Correct.
Internet Explorer for internal website, leaving Edge with a blank screen.
Correct.
Is there any way we can actually change that behavior?
I mean, not really, because what's happening is you're basically saying, I'm trying to launch this URL whose protocol is HTTP or HTTPS. By default, your default browser gets launched, which is Edge, and then Edge would automatically open that. So you can't really skip that step. We could theoretically look into automatically closing the Edge process after redirection. It would be a new feature as far as I'm aware. I don't think that's supported currently, but I think that's a good idea. If you could reach out to me on email or on the Edge user voice, I'd be happy to try and speak with the enterprise support team to figure out. I think that makes sense. Cool, thank you very much. Hands? Oh,
Based on her question, would it be from Outlook if you click on a local internet site that has your to open IE directly based on the listing you have?
no, because it opens a protocol. So the protocol is what gets handled first. So theoretically, at a registry level, you could actually configure HTTP sites to be opened with one browser, HTTPS with another browser, et cetera. And so the protocol gets handled first. In this case, the HTTP asterisk is handled by Edge because that's your default browser. At that point, the actual, like the group policy for opening the intranet site is defined in Edge. It's the Edge's group policy that opens up that site list. And so Edge has to get executed in order to load that intranet site. And so there's not really a way to avoid that double binary opening, except possibly we could close it if there's no open tab besides that. So, hands? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about security of the tabs, and you were talking about something having the ability to run as Edge before running as
Sure.
Windows. And I wonder, is Edge no longer running as a user process?
No, it runs as a user process. It's not that. It's that. So what I was referring to there was one of the code mitigations that we have. And the idea, a lot of code attacks that happen in the wild, the idea, you get some kind of a bug in the system, and you're able to inject a string that somewhere gets read into memory, and then Edge would read that piece of memory, think it's its own code, and execute it. We don't allow that from happening. We check the signed verification from everything. So it's still running as a user. It's just we never allow users' code to be submitted. Everything has to be signed by the Edge process. Sir, you had your hand?
Considerations for Edge on virtual desktops?
Yeah.
Thinking of GPU application cards, maybe other things you may want to reconfigure for virtual desktops versus physical.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow the actual question.
GPU settings.
Uh-huh.
Do you degrade performance if you leave that on for virtual desktops?
There's a lot of variables in that. It can be degraded depending on the support of your hypervisor. If you have a specific scenario, I can definitely dive deep into it with you.
Application goal.
Yeah. Sure. Inside of a virtual desktop, depending on the specs of the machine, it's not necessarily degraded. It is a virtual machine within a virtual machine, so on like lower level consumer software, you will see a degradation in service. However, the virtual machine is really lightweight, so generally speaking, you won't actually notice it. It's not like it'll be really clunky or anything. It's just a slight increase in CPU usage or something like that. If you notice anything major, again, please reach out and we can definitely work with our team to fix that. Sir, in the back.
Do you expect any feature enhancements with like the pen tool or the EQ tools at all on the road?
Sure. So the question was, do we expect any enhancements to inking or pen inputs in general? Absolutely. It's actually one of the things my team is working. I think I can say that. One of the input team for Edge is currently working with the inking team to improve the usability of it. There's a lot of user scenarios and things that we want it to be as fluid as possible and make it the most sense, the interactions to make sense. And so I know they're kind of whiteboarding a whole lot of different ideas right now. If there are specific things you want to see, please submit them to user voice, submit them to my email. We would love to hear feedback. We love our pen users. Yes?
With application guard,
Uh-huh.
how do you control which
Enterprise support list. It's an exact same XML type file. It can be the literal exact same file. You can enable it to open up everything in default and then whitelist domains you want to open in regular Edge, or you can switch it and say only these open up in the application card. That being said, the switched version of that is kind of weird because generally speaking, you want to launch everything and then whitelist the safe known things, or whitelist your intranet, etc. I don't know. They should. The big thing would be since they lose their state, you might have to like relog into certain plugins. Like if you have your Pocket, the RSS reader submission thing, you might have to relog in every time. I honestly don't know off the top of my head. Again, they should. That's not something I've checked, unfortunately. But yeah, I can definitely look into it. If you want to give me your contact info, I can dig into it and send you an email or something. Hands? Yeah, yes, sir. Uh-huh.
I don't remember seeing in the UI for the site list manager
Sure.
A switch for that. So
Sure. Yeah. So, sorry if that wasn't clear. It's not a new option. So the editor is, like I said before, just a glorified XML editor. It's using the exact same syntax, but this is a new. The way that all those different GPOs work is that you submit a URL that references one of those XML files. And so what would happen is you enable application guard, and then in addition to that, you provide an XML file. It could be a same or separate one. So by default, everything would be opened, and then the enterprise site mode list would say, it would be effectively a list of whitelisted domains that would open up with it outside of application guard by default. Does that make sense? Cool. Questions? Yo. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't lose any features. It's purely syntactical changes. Absolutely. Yeah, you can group. It's probably just a dumb rule. The best way forward to prevent that would be to check out that the portal, the website tool, because it's much more actively maintained than the XML editor. The XML editor was literally 2 people, and I don't know if they even work at Microsoft anymore. So it's a much more actively maintained tool, and so we'd be much more likely to make sure that bug didn't happen. But that shouldn't happen unless I'm completely wrong. Because of the structure, it feels like it might be different, but I think there's still a way to support it. I could be wrong with everything. I could have lied this whole time. Yeah.
First, clarification. Is application guard virtualization technology you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. What is the user experience for that? What persists between the application guard
Sure.
and Edge versus not? For example, a favorite someone already asked you about
Yep.
saving files. Is that seamless for the user?
Yeah, so file access, you would still have access to the file system. It's not inside of that. Cached files get wiped away. Your bookmarks and favorites, I believe, get synced properly. I think. I'd have to double check that. As far as the user goes, the only thing that they should generally be able to tell, outside of the fact that they'd have to, like relog into Facebook every time, is this little badge in the upper left-hand corner. Basically tells them that it's a more secure environment. That being said, it's probably not best to tell certain users that they're in a more secure environment because they might get a little more cocky with their browsing. But yeah. Is there any other questions? Yeah. Was end of life at 2020, is that what you said? I mean, contracts, if somebody pays us a lot of money, it's still going to get security updates. We literally worked on a patch for IE5 a couple of weeks ago because someone gave us a lot of money. I mean, that's just, yeah. Realistically, the target is to end of life in 2020. It's going to, IE11 will continue to get security updates for a really long time, just simply because of the amount of support contracts that already exist for Windows 8. There's companies that wanted to deploy Windows 8 on, submarines that never want to have to update it for the next 2 decades. We're not going to not give them an update. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of whether or not we have a team dedicated to it. Make sense? Cool. Other questions? I have stickers and business cards and answers to the questions if you want to find me here. Otherwise, feel free to schedule a meeting with me in your Ignite app. It was great talking to all of you. Bye.